Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we'll discuss about the biggest unknowns of the hi-fi world. Preamps. Almost nobody is discussing about them, yet we have them in most DA converters, CD players, receivers, turntables and so on. Undeniably, dedicated preamps are here for a reason, but can they do their job poorly or can they elevate your listening experience to the next level? These are very good questions and I'll try to answer them today. But today I'll discuss not only about an active preamplifier, as this guy can also power all sorts of headphones, and it's an equally impressive phono preamplifier, so it's more like a 3-in-1 device. It's called KECES S4 and it will cost you a pretty penny. How much? About 4,000 euros, and I hope 4,000 US dollars, and let's check it out in the usual fashion. KECES audio is not something new around here. I recently tested their feature-packed and very natural sounding eBravo streamer together with the P6 power supply. I also use daily their iQRP 3600 balanced power conditioner, which I cannot live without. With every generation the sound got more refined, like a bottle of wine, yet the brand identity, fit and finish remained intact. The first thing you'll notice is a thick CNC machined case that will shield it against wireless interference. The metalwork is flawless and the unit looks like a serious piece of engineering. On its front plate you'll find a 4-pin XLR headphone jack and a mechanical switch that lets you select headphone amplifier or preamp operation. On the right, 2 buttons let you mute the unit or dim the display above, and the volume level on the far right also acts as an on-off button when long pressed. Flip it around and you'll be surprised by the number of analog inputs and outputs. It can act as a phono stage and the 6 switches lets you adjust the loading impedance. The DS optical input comes next and there's a regular RCA line level input. 2 pairs of XLR inputs are present, including 2 pairs of RCA outputs and a single pair of XLR outputs. The 4-pin XLR jack on the far right lets you connect the main unit to the power supply, and the supplied minute-to-minute trigger cable is mandatory to be inserted, otherwise the unit won't power on. Under its hood, the most important thing to know is that we're dealing with a quad mono, fully symmetrical, discrete, full Class A preamp and headphone amplifier that never uses negative feedback to deal with the noise, and as far as I know, these are basically the purest sounding solid-state preamps and headphone amplifiers out there. Having a peek inside the S4, you should know that 2 PCBs have been sandwiched together and you can see only a single PCB from this angle. The preamp stage / headphone amplifier circuit can be seen on the right side of the PCB. There are 2 modules on top and 2 underneath, forming a fully symmetrical 4-way circuit. Everything seems to be crafted from discrete components only, so not a single op-amp can be spotted in there. On the lower left part you can see the input stage that seems populated with plenty of discrete components, and on top you can see the R2R volume control. I counted 24 relays on top and 24 below, so 48 relays in total that provide 128 steps of volume. This is certainly an overkill R2R volume control, but it was mandatory for precise control even at the lowest volumes. 2 massive heatsinks are cooling down 4 MOSFETs and 4 silicon power transistors, again arranged in a fully symmetrical configuration that consume together around 90 watts and will dissipate most of the heat coming from within the unit. I measured around 65 degrees Celsius on the power transistors themselves and around 60 degrees Celsius on the top cover, just in a very small area, which are safe temperatures, but I still don't recommend putting anything on top of the main unit. You can, however, stack the S4 and the power supply, but please make sure to put the main unit on top for better heat dissipation. I also removed the top screws of the power supply, and sure enough, KECES didn't spare a dime on this one, crafting a slightly overkill filtering and voltage regulation stage, not to mention the massive transformers, an L-core and also a Torrey transformer doing the heavy lifting, and 2 massive Rubicon caps doing most of the cleanup job. Before telling you a lot about the sound of the KECES S4, you should understand that I'm not listening only to the KECES S4. I'm listening to the rest of my setup as well, to my speakers, to my monoblocks, to my streamer, to my DAC. The only difference is that I'm adding an active component in between my DAC and my power amplifiers. And people usually believe that reviewing a preamp is very difficult. But the truth is not really so, because honestly, in 15 years of playing with hi-fi components, the biggest gains I have experienced so far was when I changed my DAC, and two, when I changed my preamplifier, or more exactly when I added an active preamplifier in between my DAC and my power amplifiers. So this is very important. My system, you already know it. I have the Radio TD 2.2 loudspeakers, I have the Rockna Duo, Roon server, and also DAC. I have the Chord Ultima Pre 2 preamplifier and also Ultima 3 monoblock amplifiers. At the moment when I swapped that Pre 2 with the KECES S4, I immediately realized that the sound is almost as transparent and almost as clean, but not exactly on the same level. But what was interesting is that it was adding a little bit more bass energy into this room. So it was a little bit more playful, a bit more fun sounding in a way, although it was not exactly as tight sounding like the Chord. The interesting part is that the tonal balance was definitely a little bit warmer and, a little bit juicier sounding on the KECES compared to the Chord. It was adding a little bit more energy in the bass and also in the treble. It added some organic matter into my room, a little bit more than the Chord, while remaining as punchy and as impactful in the lowest octaves. The S4, like the Pre 2 before it, added a little bit of soul and warmth into my tunes. A little bit of sweetness could be felt in the air, as if I swapped some mediocre sounding Class D amplifiers with some monster Class A amplifiers, or as if somebody planted some vacuum tubes into the output stage of my DAC. It was a very similar effect in a way. The sound became quite easy on the ear, and the KECES S4 was showing me the beauty within rather than enhancing the contour of the notes. With the KECES S4 in place, the music became weighty, the bass and mid-range became playful. I believe that more so than the treble, and it scared away all of the listening fatigue with its smooth and quite liquid character. And considering that I'm dealing with a full Class A preamplifier that is using discrete components, that never applies any kind of nasty tricks like negative feedback, it shouldn't be a surprise to you that I'm getting this fullness, this weight, this texture, this density in the sound. The interesting part is that the KECES S4 and the Ultima Pre 2 have pretty much the same tonal balance, with the exception that S4 adds a little bit more bass into this room, and the other difference is that with the Pre 2 I have multiple gain settings, and on the S4 I have just one single gain setting. The biggest fear I had while exchanging the Pre 2 with the KECES S4 is that the resolving abilities of my system and of my speakers will be going down, and I'll have some noise and some distortion. And this is basically the last thing you want to have in your hi-fi system that you consider to be, very high performance. And the moment when I was swapping the Pre 2 with the KECES S4, my heart started pumping a little bit faster, but my face brightened in the next minute because the sound was not going down in terms of dynamic range and signal-to-noise ratio. I didn't feel that I couldn't focus on the things playing in the background, or that micro details were lost in transit, things that never happened on the KECES S4. The interesting part is that when I went much lower on the volume, I didn't feel that dynamics were no longer as playful or no longer as engaging. The sound didn't lose its charm, its weight and fullness, and I think that I could listen even to music at lower volumes and still get toy tapping experience and very pleasing, fun sound signature. I was surprised by how balanced my setup sounded in the evening at a lower volume. All of the fullness and all of that mid-range density that KECES is capable of wasn't toned down, not even a single bit. The warmth and naturalness coming out of the speakers was quite apparent, and I didn't need to bring the volume up to feel the power of the sound. Knowing that the Radio TD 2.2 became as smooth and as relaxing and as organic and as natural sounding as I know them to be on my own preamplifier, I just realized how much more interesting the S4 becomes, especially considering the extra features it provides and a much lower price point. On the surface, I Wish by Marcin and Hayato seems like an ordinary acoustic track where two maestros are trying to show off their skills. Marcin plays the classic guitar like it's a 3-in-1 instrument, using it as a drum, guitar and violin, while Hayato plays with piano pedals like he's in a Formula 1 car on the racetrack. The play is short but quite unusual. It's exactly the kind of music you would expect from Marcin and Hayato. Short, playful, powerful and incredibly dynamic, like a rush of coffee in the morning. The best part is that no matter how fast or slow the tempo was changing, how smooth or powerful the beats were, the S4 was always in control of every upbeat and down tempo, sounding alive and punchy when needed, and relaxing on many other occasions. It's no secret to anyone that I like my beats alive, impactful, I like a stronger kick into my chest, I like hearing those deep rumbles in the bass. I'm usually toy tapping, headbanging, smiling when I'm listening to music. This is who I am, I won't hide around the bush. I simply like when the music is speaking to me. And when it comes to dynamics, there is one thing that I need to mention. The KECES S4 is quite impressive in this regard, and it's never pressing the brakes in terms of transients, speed or impact. It's actually taking flight in this department. And if you know a thing or two about electronics, especially about Class A bias electronics, about fully discrete output stages that never use negative feedback, then you know that a higher tier solid-state electronics simply does not exist. I believe in terms of dynamics, this is as good as it can get. And this guy is not slowing down, it's never pressing the brakes in this department. I'm getting a clear and defined bass delivery, and if you admire high quality bass with layers of it coming slowly one after another, then I don't think you'll remain unimpressed. I'll go as far as to say that I found this one a little bit more natural sounding compared to my former Chord Electronics Ultima Prayer 3, that was a little bit edgier sounding in this department, and also it's more groovier sounding compared to the Harmony HP2A by Live Audio. The most interesting test I left for last, because headphone listening for me is exactly as important as my stereo addiction, and my current favorite headphones are T+A Solitaire P together with the Headphone Susvara Unveiled. These two are very technical, very clean, resolving, very tight, very fast, also punch and natural sounding, with the difference is that Solitaire P are more impressive in the bass, more punchy sounding and stronger in that region, and Susvara Unveiled more impressive in the mid-range region. The only problem is that you need some very impressive headphone amplifiers in terms of power output, control, cleanness. Usually you need an S-tier headphone amplifier to awake the sleeping beauty within these two pairs of headphones. And the interesting part is that KECES is not specifying the output power, nothing really about the S4 on the website, on the user manual. But this feature felt like a golden treasure to me, because this one sounded like an S-tier solid-state headphone amplifier. Plenty of power, plenty of control, lots of naturalness, sounding big, exactly how I would describe a well-made solid-state headphone amplifier. With regular headphones like Meze Elite, like RZH Charybdis, RZH Phobos, Kenerton Drogner was arriving at around 70 out of 128 steps available, but mind you, I'm using a slightly hotter DAC that outputs 7 volts via XLR as opposed to 4 volts of a regular DAC, so it gives a helping hand in a way. With the T+A Solitaire P, I was arriving at around 85 volume levels, and with the Susvara Unveiled at around 95 out of 128 steps, so plenty of headroom was still remaining on top, and it was still punchy, big sounding, impressive bass delivery, very tight and also natural with lots of textures and meat on the bone. So this is not an overlooked feature. No, I believe this one performs like a proper solid-state headphone amplifier. So maybe there is not as much power on top like with the Harmony HP2A by Live Audio, but it's definitely as punchy and dynamic, and it's not leaving as much headroom on top like the Ilium AM23R, but it's definitely as organic sounding. It's not as powerful like the bars on Soloist Voyager, but it's exactly as speedy, and it's not as feature-packed like the Ferrum Ore driven by the Hypsos power supply, but it's as meaty and as textured. And let's not forget its soundstaging capabilities, which were almost on the same level with dual Flux Lab Acoustics Mentor stack. The only two drawbacks that I found with this one is that it provides just one single gain setting of 20 dB when working as a preamplifier or as a headphone amplifier. So you can forget about using some ultra-sensitive IAMs with this one, the gain is too high, and also forget about using some uber powerful monoblock amplifiers because you'll have very little play on the volume wheel. But this part can also be beneficial, especially if you are using some low-powered monoblock amplifiers like single-ended triode amplifiers, for example. My second nitpick is that Class A preamplifiers usually generate more heat, and that is definitely the case with the KECES S4. I measured 60 degrees Celsius on the top plate in a small area, which is not dangerous, but it's higher compared to 45 degrees of my Ultima Pre 2. This higher than usual temperature won't impact the component's lifespan, since only a very small area reaches this temperature, but you still need to make sure to have some proper spacing all around it. Wrapping up, please don't get sad that I was unable to test its phono stage, but don't forget that it uses absolutely the same circuitry to amplify the voltage and control the volume that it already uses with the preamp and headphone amplifier section, so I wouldn't be surprised that the phono stage would sound exactly as lively, as textured, as meaty, as organic like its preamp stage and also its headphone amplifier. And also don't forget that this is not just a preamp, but this is a 3-in-1 device, and it's a very fine sounding preamp and headphone amplifier, and I'm pretty sure that the phono stage is equally as impressive. Yes, it's on the costlier side of things, but at the same time it's undeniably an impressive, and this is not an exaggeration, preamplifier and headphone amplifier, and this will be my second highly impressive award for this year because it just impressed me. It sounds great, and you know, sound-wise I cannot complain much about this. I can complain about it getting a little hotter, about having just one single gain setting, but other than that, this is what I would expect a high-performance preamp and headphone amplifier to sound. This is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed my review. Please consider liking and subscribing if you found this video helpful. A much longer, in-depth written review for the S4 can be found below. Please check that out. And as usual, keep your chin up, and I'll see you very, very soon. Cheers!